Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. How we all doing? Took something in the anonymous questionnaire this week. How's your Sunday so far? So far I've barely done anything. Vertex Snapper. Hello. No, nothing in the anonymous questionnaire. That's good. How are you doing, Vertex Snapper? Hey, Cairo. How you doing, man? I'm curious if we're gonna have more luck with the stream today. I had some issues with it yesterday. I hope I did some adjustments, so I hope that we should be good. Fingers crossed. Because yeah, it's been annoying. Yesterday I tried running the stream with like there's like a checkbox that you can tick. It says like stream optimized settings, but yeah, like if the stream crashes twice, I wouldn't really call that stream optimized settings. Good, gonna watch the stream and then catch some sleep. Oh yeah. Awesome. Glad that you're here right before sleep. Do. Hey, Pame, welcome. No, you were pretty late this time. Oof. It's all good. We haven't started yet. Because your question is the first one, though. That's the first one we're going to talk about. We got 3 questions from the community, and then we can dive into some chat questions. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to just drop them in the chat. We can go through them. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Just making sure. Seems fine. Okay, that's good. That's good. Sometimes it's weird when you catch people before the stream. You have to refresh it or something. All right. A good amount of people in here. So let's get it started. The first question from Pame Dominguez is, how do you manage to get all the meetings, your work, the community, and the YouTube channel running all at once? Sometimes barely. Because I sometimes I keep forgetting that I need to upload like a certain video at a certain date. I try to automate as much as possible. So for example, the blog that I do, the only like the biggest thing that I do is I have to save all the links with an add-on that I have in Google, and it automatically like snaps all the important info from like a page, and then puts it in like a Google Google Sheet document. Then what happens after is that there's another step in the optimization process that takes all those entries, puts them on the form that I use on my website, and then automatically populates it with that information. It is still pretty buggy because I need to replace the first image in every section because there's something wrong in like the HTML code, because I'm also doing that myself, right? So there's something wrong going there. I still need to look at it. But that is pretty, yeah, I would say that's pretty much it. Like, try to, well, not it in terms of like how to manage it all, but when it comes to automation, I try to, if there's something that I repeat over and over, I try to set something automatically up for that. There's also a bunch of stuff from like social media for the Beyond Extent Twitter account, LinkedIn account, and also Facebook. That's all automated because all the links that I use in my weekly blog, for example, if they are propagated to the site, they also get spread over 3 different spreadsheets: one for interesting links, one for artwork that I want to feature, and one for what's the other one? So we got, oh no, the community as well. The community is a different spreadsheet. So that makes it so that I can use automation again to, for example, the community spotlight. I have no input in that whatsoever. That is just like fully automated at this point. Which is probably the only way that I can still run this show almost entirely by myself, except for the challenges, right, where Lloyd comes in and doing all the work. So that's like the social media side of things. The YouTube channel and, like, for example, the podcast, I still need to do manually. So usually when we record a podcast, next day Will does the editing, and then after that I'll upload it, and usually that's like 2 weeks before it actually launches, so I can set it all up, do all the descriptions, which is also something that Will helps me out with. I do need to set like a reminder for myself and like have a post-it on my desktop to just remind me that I need to upload like the podcast by like a certain time. And I mean, you've all probably noticed that, like, on Patreon, like the updates are like quite dispersed at some points, because it's just like, oh damn, I forgot to upload the blog for this week on Patreon, for example. Yeah, when it comes to like meetings, work, and the community, honestly, yeah, it's sort of like my priority at the moment, right? Especially the community, even more so than work, I would say, if I'm being honest, right? And yeah, there's just like a high priority on that. So I barely play any games. I barely spend any time on social media. It's just either focused on personal work or helping the community out. Like, I try to cut out like all the fluff that doesn't really matter that much anyway. And when it comes to like the meeting, I use an app called Calendly, where I send the links for like all the monthly meetings out to the people that want to have a meeting, and then they can schedule a time according to my calendar that I've set up. So if I have like, if I want to have like a day off, like in the month, I can just book off that entire day, and then people can't book a slot in that day. But when it actually comes to just the time management, right, or just how would I say, just like making a plan for every day. I don't really do that. It's very free formed, like free flowing. Um, because the issue with a plan is that with so many different gears running this machine, if like one gear pops out, I need to be able to just switch it up immediately and just focus my attention there instead of my normally my plan. But yeah, there's still a lot that I can improve though. A lot of reminders, a lot of timers that I can set up for like reminders for like the AMA questions, for example. That's something that I'm looking into now. Reminders for the challenges, trying to smooth out the process of the challenges itself. That's also a big priority for me and Lloyd at the moment. And we're just looking at like some new tools that we can use for the Discord too. So we might see some changes in the coming weeks. But yeah, it's just because I'm a workaholic probably. When I play games, it's probably like half an hour before I go to sleep, and that's it. I still spend time with my girlfriend though. Like I try to, well, I need to get better at it first, but we still play games together. Like we still watch we watch like an episode of like a show that we're following like every day. Still eat together, like not at our desks. That is still also a big priority. Although I need to get better at balancing that and balancing my time a little bit better so I can make more time. So yeah, that's a good question, Bami. If anything when it comes to that, just give me a shout and I'll try to elaborate. I think that I spend too much time on games and social media, mobile and such. Yeah, it's weird, right? Maybe it's also because all my really close friends that I had in Belgium, they don't spend time on social media at all. So we never really talk until we see each other in person. Like as soon as I'm back in Belgium, we hit each other up and then we meet up for like a large party. But we don't really talk in the meantime. We don't have like long calls or anything like that. Yeah, and my time spent on games, I don't know, this took me a long time though. It took me a long time to switch from enjoying playing games more than actually creating stuff, because now I think I love the creation process more than actually playing games. I still use games as like a treat to myself at the end of the day, saying like, okay, you did a good job, now just relax for like half an hour to an hour before you go to sleep. And then at least I'm not thinking about work the entire time, or like less. I'm still thinking about it, but oh, that's also a good point, right? Like mobile, I don't use my phone, like barely. Like I use it for maybe checking Twitter every couple of days, maybe. It depends on what's happening, right? Like there are moments where I'm a little bit more active on Twitter and I scroll through it a little bit more. But usually I only use my phone for checking financial stuff. And that's basically it. Like no games. I don't have Facebook, I don't have LinkedIn. I only have Twitter because that's like a platform that I still enjoy the most. And I've gated it so much that it's mostly art, because all the stuff is just distracting. So I blocked like a ton of words. I don't have notifications turned on my phone, or barely any. Like I get like emails and like notifications from my calendar, but that's mainly it. Like right now I have two new email notifications and one reminder that the AMA is running, and that's it. Putting the phone on do not disturb and notifications helps a lot. Yep, exactly. Yeah, no notifications. Exactly. I agree. Yeah, that probably helped me a lot. Just not being distracted by all that stuff. Yeah, I feel a lot of anxiety when I have too much notifications. Yeah, and it's also it's kind of false, right? Like it doesn't really matter. Like what if you have like new notifications for like new likes on Twitter? It doesn't really matter. Like it's just it gives you that little bit of a what's it called? Like an endorphin boost. Just makes you feel good for just a second, and then the fall is always bigger than that boost of happiness. Because you have to remember that these apps are designed like slot machines. Like they are designed to hook you in. So, I mean, maybe it's that realization that it's all designed like that, but yeah, spouting some Buddhist wisdom here. I think it's just, I think a lot of people, including myself, right, at a certain point struggle with that, with like, like I need to be more active on social media, but it's all false. Like it's all not real. Like the thing that matters is talking to people, person to person. That is still gonna hold true over time. Like you can get likes and you can get follows, but in the end, you're still working towards like an algorithm, right? So the algorithm is still in control there. Where if you just have like a person-to-person conversation, like you're in control for that conversation. So yeah, hopefully that helps out. Spend a little bit less time on the phone. Turn off those damn notifications. All right. Next question from Ben Black. How much hair do you think you've lost since becoming an artist? Oh, that's a good one, man. I don't know. The only thing that I can say for sure is that I'm balding, though. Like, that is for sure. Yeah, and second part of your question, has your hair started turning white yet? I don't think at this point it's gonna get the chance to turn white. I'll probably continue balding and then just cut it off at some point. I'm just enjoying it while it lasts, I guess. But yeah, like this sort of in a weird way links to the first question, right? Because I'm doing so much. I'm taking so much on my shoulders, and I love doing it. But there must be an angle to it where it also causes subconscious stress, where I don't realize that I'm stressed because I'm taking so much on, but because I enjoy it, like it makes up for the fact, but it's still stress in the end, right? So there must be something there, and that's also where it becomes interesting to start thinking about how to balance it going forward, because I'm not sure how I'm gonna balance it going forward, or like what's gonna change. I am getting to a point where it's becoming more and more of a decision rather than a question, like the community and all the stuff that I'm doing on the side. Like it's becoming so much of a time sink, or well, not a time sink, that sounds like negative, but I love spending my time so much on that it might be worth to start thinking about either optimizing that time, cutting down on it, or making the switch completely. And that's yeah, it's gonna be a big jump. But yeah, good question, Ben. Next one from Fran. Do you have any experience or you know about selling environments on Gumroad, the marketplace? I'm not talking about individual prompts, but whole scenarios. Do you think it's a good idea / worth it? Pros and cons. Yeah, I sell packages on the Unreal Engine marketplace. I sell two. So my latest piece from 3 years ago now, Last Bastion, is on there on the marketplace. And I also made a smaller pack within that same environment that was just the pipes. So say you didn't want the entire environment, but you were interested in the pipe set. I think I created like 5 different sets with like different textures, like a shader that you could tweak on the fly. And I sold that as like a separate pack because I saw some value for people there that only wanted like a nice set of pipes. But yeah, do you think it is a good idea / worth it? Yeah, 100%. 100% worth it. There is a balance that you need to strive for, right? You can't just build like a personal project and then not think about like the marketplace aspect of it if you want to sell it. So you have to make it somewhat playable. You have to add like things that you normally wouldn't add in your environment. So say for example the medieval market that I'm working on right now, even if you wouldn't see stairs, I would need to make stairs because that is, well, in my opinion, that makes the pack more complete than it was without stairs. So there's definitely some stuff in there that you need to think about. Because what did I do? I had like a complete walkway kit. I had like a bunch of pipes. And then of course, I think what really helped me there was the ability to sell it or like to present it in a nice way on the marketplace too. But yeah, man, this is what I say to people. Like if you're thinking about building up some like income on the side, definitely look at this. Like if you can somehow take the environment that you've built and turn that into an asset package, with like minimal effort, just do it. Sell it maybe for cheaper than some other asset packages go because it's like a testing, right? And there's gonna be some feedback like, hey, maybe you can adjust the collision on this walkway because the collision right now on the walkway doesn't allow me to go over it. Like you need to keep those gameplay elements in mind too. But I would say that the amount of feedback that I got was fairly minimal compared to like what it gave me back in like monetary value. To give a comparison, how should I say this? There's like a bunch of different factors that come into it, right? But in my first month of selling that package, those 2 packages on the Unreal Engine marketplace, they almost made me as much as I was earning as a monthly wage. It goes down pretty quickly from there, but I'm still getting like a stable, what is it, like $150 from it, like a month, something like that. I hope you all don't mind me sharing some numbers here, just to give you like a more clear example, right? And not talk about like abstractions. But yeah, I would definitely say that is worth it. 100%. To be honest, I can only see pros to this. I can't really see any cons to it. The main cons that I could see is just in terms of like if you want to make a full asset package or like a full environment, right? Then you just need to be careful about what the amount of assets that you make, like how they piece together, like the content in the pack itself is really important. So like the staircase example that I brought up before, you kind of need those extra things to make like a complete kit, and it takes a bit more time than you just finishing like a nice piece to put on your portfolio. But for me, especially because I work in such a modular way, like the step between my end result that I can put on my portfolio and then making it sellable on the Unreal Engine marketplace is relatively um, relatively uh, what is it? Relatively small. I don't know why it took me so long to come up with that. Yeah, that is a good point, Hamish. Have you heard of selling assets on a marketplace conflicting with non-compete clauses in the main employment contract? Yes, be careful with that stuff. And also, if you're already working on a main job, don't do anything on your work PC at work, because it might happen that if, look, I don't think a company is actually going to do this, right? But technically the company has a right for anything that you open up on the PC at work to fully claim ownership of that. So you definitely have to be careful with that. I, for example, have brought this up with Ubisoft, like the company that I work currently, right? Ubisoft Berlin. And I have a special addendum to my contract that allows me to pursue the creation of learning resources, the creation of asset packages on the Unreal Engine marketplace. So I brought that up with work. So I would consider myself really fortunate there, because it's a risk, right? Say you bring this up to your boss at your work, and he's like, no, like, what are you gonna do? Because they probably know at that point that you might still do it anyway, and you might have just brought some extra attention on yourself. So, I mean, it was a risk, but yeah, in my case, it really paid off, because now I don't need to worry about like all the extra income that I make with like anything I do on the side, right? That's a really good point though, Hamish. A really good one. Because that is super important. Because, oh god, if we're, the reason why I started doing that was because at my time at Frontier, living in Cambridge, it was super expensive for we couldn't really save anything. And I was thinking like, okay, 2 years down the line, what if I potentially want to move back to another country? I need to save something. So that's why I started looking into I think at first it was like selling like mini substance tutorials, and then doing Unreal Engine marketplace packages. So I mean, honestly, without all that stuff, we couldn't even move to places if we wanted to. Like it was super tough for us to move. That's also because I was like new in the industry, right? Right now, if I were to do the same thing on my current wage, it would be like it would like be manageable, like easily. But yeah, back then it was all about like creating more financial freedom as well. Interesting for sure. Thanks, Tim. Certainly something I've been wondering about. Yeah, no worries, man. I would recommend. Look, I always try to be as open as possible to my employer, right? So that's why I also brought up that I talked to HR, and I was like, look, I'm looking into. Well, I already had like sort of like a thing going on the side anyway. So I mentioned that, and they were like, okay, like if you want to continue doing that, then we need to set up like a special thing in your contract. And then I had to talk to the studio director about it too, in a private meeting. But I mean, after like a short talk, there was like no issue. They were super open about that too, and I really appreciate them for it. Um, while we're on this topic, right? Do you find that people finding your packs on the marketplace are doing so because you're a well-known artist, or is discoverability pretty good on the Unreal Engine 4 marketplace? That's a really good question, Cairo. Because I honestly don't know. I think at this point it might be. I don't know about the discoverability, but when I think about it in a way where if artists discover my work, they're not going to be looking to buy that work from me. They just want to look at the pretty pictures. That's at least what I think. Like I know a lot of artists that make like killer asset packages, but it's like I want to see how it's built, and then it's like, oh man, that's so cool, and that's it. I never make the step to buy it. Um, that being said, though, I think um, I am known in the sphere because I did like a bunch of resources, right? That definitely helped me becoming more known. So there must be like a factor in that as well, where if you put yourself out there, you create resources, you become more known for creating like interesting resources. Maybe for some artists that's their way of like showing support. I honestly have no idea. Because that could be pretty interesting, right? If you're a beginning environment artist and you wanna see how it's all made behind the scenes, you can just buy a pack from the Unreal Engine marketplace and then see how it's all built. Like go digging in the materials, go digging in the textures, how they're made, how modularity works. Like you can see it actually working if you start snapping them and like building stuff with it yourself. So there is definitely some value in it, but I think most of it is just for uh, creators that want to have like an interesting package. That is, yeah, it's something that I've been wondering myself as well. Like where do all the sales come from? Or like who's the person behind the sales, right? So yeah, definitely interesting. But here's the thing, like to just round off this topic, right? Um, I think personally that, well, if you have the time and if you have the energy left for it, try to create something on the side, something that brings back value to the community, because it can bring real value for you too. For example, I think one of the first things that I did when I was really thinking about creating a resource was the substance designer tile tutorial that I did. And it took me quite a while to build and like quite a while to write it down, the PDF, and then I gave it for free. But then if you want it, you could buy the material to like follow along inside the material, which was fully commented like inside the graph. That didn't really sell as much as I would hoped for, but it sparked the interest of like a lot of people. And I think in the end that also helps with like just building this connection, right? Building this more from a business perspective, just like this like the email lists that people keep going on, or just like a customer database, if you want to call it like that. Hi Zeku, how are you doing? So yeah, I'm personally really interested in just the business aspect of it. And I'm constantly thinking about like, okay, what's the next step? Like how can I bring value to people while still being fair in the pricing and all that stuff, right? So yeah, this is something that definitely interests me. But I would recommend everyone to try it out. At least try it out. because I was skeptical in the beginning, and then I used my first pack and I was like, okay, this could potentially be life-changing. And to a certain extent it was. And I'm pretty sure that if I would have kept it up, if I would have put like a new asset package, like maybe every 6 months or every year or something, it sort of compounds with the other asset packages too. So that would have been interesting. But then of course I probably wouldn't have had the community and all that stuff either, right? So yeah, good stuff. For all the people in the chat, feel free to drop any questions, right? We've been going on this marketplace talk for a bit, so feel free to just drop any questions and we'll go through it. From the Habik 2. If I want to use it, how do I have to prepare my mesh? For example, how dense does the topology need to be? And do I have to exaggerate the height map to get proper deformation? Are there other things I need to keep an eye out for? Tessellation is mainly used on landscapes. Because if we're talking about a mesh, then it's probably better to use just a denser mesh anyway, as like your LOD0. So if you're up close to it, you can, I don't know, it depends on the mesh, right? You can use like a denser mesh, deform, use like a, what's it called again? Like a well-positioned offset in Unreal Engine or something, instead of using like tessellation. Because how would I explain this? Like tessellation is sort of like the reverse loading system that you use in like a weird way. Tessellation is just adding more geometry to your mesh, whereas if you need more geometry in like a normal asset, you would just have an asset with more polygons, and then optimize it in like lot 1 and lot 2 and lot 3 as it goes out. Let's see, for example, how dense does the topology need to be, and do I have to exaggerate So the more tessellated materials you see on Substance Designer material balls will all need to be modeled for real again, anyway, if they're not a landscape. You could use the height map that you get from that in the vertex, like in the world position offset in Unreal, for example. That you would probably, I'm thinking about a case where I would tessellate just a normal asset. No, I can't really think of anything at the moment, to be honest. But yeah, tessellated materials on like substance material balls, that's like just to give you an idea of what the height map inside of Unreal Engine could be to control like the world position offset, for example. Because it basically does the same thing. Well, you can use them in conjunction, right? So say for example that you're painting on moss on like a wooden surface or something. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna have a height map for that moss plugged in, well, multiplied with like the vertex color, right? Let me back paddle here. So if you're trying to blend moss and wood, then you would need a height map and a vertex color multiply them, and then multiply those materials according to that multiplication. And then you get some control. Like there is like a node in Unreal Engine, like a height blend, a height lerp, sorry, that you can just plug in the height map that you use for like displacing the geometry in Substance technically, and then use that to control the world position offset in Unreal Engine instead. And then the amount of vertices that you have on your mesh will control how accurate it will be according to the height map that you feed it. I see, so a very detailed height map from those flex materials could actually help me to fake more details onto the object via textures. Yep. Yeah, technically you could. Yeah, I don't have a good example for that set up yet. I still have it planned, but that would be interesting to show in like one of the next streams. Because that's something that I'm planning myself. Moss on top of like wood. So that would be interesting to dive into. I thought that tessellation was commonly used on other assets. No, not really. It's exactly the thing that we mentioned before, right? Also, a lot of those super crazy materials you see in ArtStation probably wouldn't be used in the game. Yeah, it depends, right? They would be used in the game, but then they won't be like 4K or whatever the resolution they're at. And a lot of them, well, not a lot of them, but like definitely a decent amount of them wouldn't work if you're using them like multiple times on like a tiling surface, because then you see the tileability. But it still shows off that you can get some nice things out in materials. Like if we're talking about materials like that, there's so much you can do, right? You can create multiple variations of the same material that all look like a bit differently, and then blend them on like the same surface, so that you get this built-in randomization, and then you don't see the tileability anymore. Yeah, tessellation is only used on terrain, as far as I know. There might be some other examples, but most of the time, maybe river splines or something like that, something more procedural. I don't know. I don't think so. It's a good question though. Good question. Do we answer it all? I have to exaggerate the height map to get some proper deformation. Are there other things I need to keep an eye for? Yeah, just look at the world position offset for that, and how to use a height map. That's definitely gonna help you along. Hamish, Cairo, we answered this. This was all about like the marketplace assets. Technical question. Which format is better when exporting 3D models to import them in a game engine? I think FBX, because there's like a bunch of additional things that an FBX can export compared to an OBJ, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm not sure about what actually the differences are between them. Yeah, let's have a look. Interesting. Yeah, I'm just looking up like a quick list, but oh, FBX also support rigs, animation, lights, cameras. You would technically use like an OBJ if you wanted a clean mesh with no unnecessary additional junk. But when I'm building in Unreal Engine, I'm only using FBX. Everything just as an FBX. I've had some weird issues with and that probably explains now that I read it. I had some issues with exporting FBXs for baking inside of Substance Painter. It's probably because it exported like a bunch of junk as well. So that's good to keep in mind. Because yeah, for some meshes I had to use an OBJ to bake it down. I think in 1 or 2 instances that happened. Awesome. I've noticed FBX files are sometimes smaller than the same OBJ files, but that's all I've noticed. Oh, really? Because I was just thinking that it was the inverse. That the OBJ was always smaller than the FBX. I might be wrong here though. Because yeah, if I just read that description, it kind of makes sense, right? If the OBJ is just a clean version. I mean, it's probably like a different writing algorithm behind it. So it might be more expensive or like more like bigger in the end. I'm curious now. I'm curious if that's actually a thing. Does anyone else in chat know if an FBX if we're like using the same mesh, if an FBX is smaller than an OBJ? I'm curious now. That would be interesting. Would those Substance Designer environments be viable for game dev? Yeah, I've seen the ones that you're talking about. Like ArtStation Learning, where it's Sci-Fi Corridor made only in Designer. You know, Tiger. No, not really. I think it's more to show off like the skill that you can have. Because the thing is, like, even if you were to use it in that way, right? Like, say you would use like a parallax occlusion mapped material for offsetting the height, you would have like you would need a specific solution that gets rid of like all the artifacts on the edges, or set the stepping so high that it becomes like a really expensive material. It's just way cheaper to do it just in like small geometry and bake it down from a high poly if you want to do that. Let's think, right? Because I remember Daniel Tiger making like, I think it was swords and all that stuff too that he was doing. But I mean, it's super cool to see what you can do with just like really simple geometry and then like really expensive materials. But it's still way cheaper to do it in just like an old school bake down to low poly fashion. Look, maybe this is highly doubtful in like a game scenario, right? But maybe Unreal Engine 5, with the optimizations that they're doing to like the mesh pipeline and the amount of polys that they can have, maybe it could be interesting to try that out. So yeah, I don't know. Other than that, I think it's still unfeasible. And it's gonna be quite unfeasible for a long time, because even if Unreal Engine 5 switches over to like this new pipeline with all the fancy stuff, it's gonna take a while before the other game studios can possibly implement some sort of solution that does the same thing. And we still don't know if it's actually viable in like for example, an open world setting where there is like a lot of people walking around, or where there's like actual gameplay happening, right? Because the stuff that we've seen from Unreal Engine 5 didn't really have that much gameplay. Like we had a character walking through an environment and there was like stuff collapsing, but yeah, there's no actual AI or gameplay logic or anything running in that world. So I'm curious to see how it actually would do in like, for example, imagine it being used in Cyberpunk. It would be like a totally different situation, right? What about Alembic? Good question. I don't even know about that file export. I've never used it before, so I'm not sure. Well, what is the difference between Alembic and like other file sources? Because I honestly have no idea. I don't know, but I remember from exporting from ZBrush as an OBJ and then transforming it in Blender. Okay. Just did a quick test. FBX of a high poly, 4 megabytes. Oh, okay, cool. So there must be something in like the writing. I don't know, like the write algorithm that makes it bigger. That's interesting. Yeah, thanks for testing that, Hamish. Yeah, I would expect so. Do you have any tips on on how to avoid set dressing from looking too noisy? Hey Martin, thanks for dropping in, man. What I can say when it comes to set dressing is there are like a couple of rules that I always start to keep in mind. There is like an 80-20 rule that can be applied to like a lot of stuff. Like people call it the 80-20 rule or like the 70-30 rule, where you need to give some space. You need to give some breathing space and then offset it with like a nice cluster of details. So where this applies to set dressing is, say you have a space that you wanna completely set dress. You're not gonna set dress everything equally. You're gonna try and put as much detail in the thing that you want to have stand out, ideally. Also, another tip for this is I always try to work in like people call it the rule of threes, where you have big shapes, medium shapes, and then like small shapes. And it's very important to keep all of those separate shapes if possible, right? So you would have like the big structures, then like the medium shape sizes, and then like some small details to blend it. You're basically creating a gradient of like details. And this can apply to, for example, like just boxes, right? Just have like big boxes, like smaller canister next to it, and then like some debris on the ground. You can keep reusing that same logic. But yeah, say in this case, if you have an environment that's already pretty noisy, usually what I try to do is I try to focus on like the player pathing and figure out where the player will walk, like most likely, and then try to clear up those paths as much as possible to at least create like a contrast between like all the clutter that you can possibly take cover behind, right? In like an FPS, and then the path actually looks clear, like people can actually follow that really easily. That would actually be really interesting to write like a blog post about or something, because that's a really good question, man. Let me just write that down, right? How to set dress. Not noisy. Just throw that on my pile of post-its I have here. Yeah, that's a really good question, Martin. I love it. Because this is the thing, like those are the couple of things. Shotgun approach isn't working. Yeah, I get it. Gonna try and get some sleep. Hey Ryan, thanks for popping in, man. Really appreciate it. Have a good night. Yeah, the shotgun approach isn't working. I get it. I get it. Because the things that I just summed up are like stuff that I think about actively, but I'm pretty sure that there's like a ton of stuff that I think about subconsciously that I actually don't really think about anymore. So it would be nice to just have a sit down and actually think about how I would approach like a location or something. I don't know if you're talking about personal work, but it would be interesting if you could send me a screenshot or something so I could have an example and then maybe something pops up. I'm not gonna show it on stream or anything. I'm gonna keep it private. But that would be interesting to have an example for when I sit down and dig into the set dressing. Maybe a little breakdown or something would be interesting. All right. I think, is that everything? I think so, right? Awesome. All right. Anyone else have a question for today's vid? We got some pretty good questions today, though. Pretty interesting ones. I like the ones where we actually dive into like the more technical stuff too, like all the substance designer environments. I wonder if that changes the perception from what the responsibilities as a material artist are. Say you're a junior and you're trying to get in. Like maybe that skews the perception of what a material artist needs to do in the games industry. All right, cool. I assume that we're gonna get no more questions for today. So, I mean, we can, like, if there's still something that pops up, we can still tackle it in the next one, right? I'll write it down and then we can talk about it then. But this was awesome, as always. Yeah, some really good questions. Really good stuff in here. So yeah, feel free, like if you're part of the community, feel free to drop it in the AMA questions channel on Discord. And if you're not a part of the community, feel free to just drop by like every week. We're doing this every time at the same time, so like 1 p.m. For like Berlin time. Always the same time. So thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for the good questions, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.